Well, I'm going to walk you through this, so hopefully you'll start to see self-betrayal for what it really is. It's the worst form of self-sabotage, which is the near enemy to self-harm. So here's my list of 5 things that happen when we betray ourselves. Number 1, and most importantly, I'd say, is that when you betray yourself, you're disconnecting from yourself. And again, these might be subtle at first. You might not even notice it. But when you wake up to the fact that you can't find a tether back to who you are, it's one of the most painful experiences. That disconnection it's a defense mechanism. It's your brain's way of trying to protect you from unsafe feelings. So whenever you find yourself doing these little subtle acts of self-betrayal, I want you to think about how connected you're feeling to yourself. Because if you're doing self-betrayal activities, behaviors, etc., you're probably not in tune with yourself. When you are in tune with yourself, when you have a good internal relationship, your natural reaction is not self-betrayal. Number 2, what happens when you betray yourself? Well, you end up feeling lost all the time. You go against what you know is right, and you end up feeling upside down, like you cannot get a sense of normal. You can't regain your orientation in life. And you're looking around to the people around you, and you're looking for outside sources to kind of derive your sense of worth. You don't feel like you're being seen or heard or like you matter. And you're not saying how you feel, so you really start to not know how you feel. When you're laughing and going along with other people and you're like agreeing with other people just to go along, you end up losing yourself and not really knowing, like, what do you actually think? What are your actual values? What do you actually think about consuming GMOs? You know what I mean? Like, you get this sense of, I don't know who I am. I've just been whoever people want me to be. And again, that stems from trying to avoid conflict at all costs, even if that cost is your own mental health. And I promise you, and I know it's hard, believe me, it took me a really long time to get this, but the pain that you're experiencing from avoiding conflict with other people is much more than the pain you're going to experience or the uncomfortability that you're going to experience when you allow confrontation to happen. Number 3, what happens as the result of self-betrayal? Well, you become desperate. When you're feeling out of control, you're way more susceptible to manipulation. You become willing to do anything to feel back to normal. And you feel like you can't go far enough away from yourself, so you'll do anything to escape. You're overcritical and judgmental, especially of yourself. And that desperation is just about getting away from the feeling of disconnectedness. The only way you can correct that desperate feeling is by reconnecting. And the only way you can reconnect is by shutting out the opinions and the ideas and the beliefs of everyone around you and sit down and figure it out for yourself. And I promise you, it's so simple. You make a list of the things that are important to you. I did this before I got into my last relationship, and it was one of the healthiest things I've ever done. I made a list of the things, the priorities, the qualities, the beliefs that were mine. For example, I want someone in my life who recycles. I believe in recycling. A little part of me dies every time I see someone throwing away things that are recyclable. Now, I could come up against a lot of people that don't give a shit about recycling. Does that mean when I'm around them, I'm going to laugh and joke about how stupid it is to take your cans in or how dumb it is to wash out your food containers? No, I'm going to stand in my own power and hold firm to what I know is true for me. And that will always make me more confident and powerful and less desperate for other people's approval. Number 4, you'll lose self-trust. And this is huge, friends. You no longer believe that you will take care of yourself. So when you are not trusting yourself, you are very vulnerable. You become very susceptible to a lot of bad, negative shit. So when you're saying yes, when you really want to say no, You are betraying yourself. You're giving in. You're losing that self-trust. And you become a victim of groupthink. You get stuck in these absolutes and you really end up just following others blindly. You really then begin to believe that your own needs and your own wants are not valid. You're there for others, but you leave yourself behind. That's what happens when you engage in these subtle acts of self-betrayal. They seem benign, but they really are not. They lead you down a path to going nutballs. Number 5 in my examples of what happens when you betray yourself is that you cannot believe that you're loved. So even when the people around you are trying to tell you how much they love you, or whenever you receive a compliment, you can't accept it without a little cringe inside because you don't really think that you're being really loved because you're not really being yourself. So when someone says they love you, internally you're thinking, you wouldn't love me if you really knew me, because you're not being really you. You're betraying yourself. You're going along with whatever anybody else around you is saying. You're trying to morph yourself into somebody else. You're trying to avoid conflict at all costs. You're afraid of boundary setting because of what will happen to you. So the love you are being given, the compassion you are being shown, can't penetrate. It can't get through. You're never going to believe it's real. If you're not really saying how you feel, and if you're not really speaking from what you think, then you're never going to believe that people are genuinely complimenting you or loving you for who you actually are. It's always going to feel hollow. And that, again, always leads to self-harm in one form or another. The only way you can get out of that cycle and really start to believe that you are loved for who you are is by being willing to go through the confrontation of not pleasing everyone or making the situation smooth or laughing and going along with everything. So I hope this helps to show you that, shit, this self-betrayal thing is really fucking dangerous. I want to go through that list really quick of what happens when we betray ourselves. Number 1, you disconnect from yourself. Number 2, you start feeling lost. Number 3, you become desperate. Number 4, you lose all self-trust. And most importantly, number 5, you cannot believe that you're actually loved. Okay, so let's say you're like, oh shit, I do this self-betrayal thing all the fucking time. What do I do? Well, first of all, I'm super proud of you for just recognizing this. You're self-aware and you want to improve your behavior so that you can feel better. So let's build on what's already working. Let's do some self-reflection and some self-care that's going to maximize what you're already doing well. You're self-aware. You're compassionate enough to know that you want to know how to stop hurting yourself. So let's build on that. I've got 10 examples of self-care that can help you heal from self-betrayal. Number 1, get grounded, centered, and silent. I don't care how, I don't care when, and I don't care for how long you do it, but just shut the fuck up and be alone with yourself and tap into the most effective free tool for self-care. Go somewhere alone, sit crisscross applesauce, take some deep breaths, and just be. With no agenda, no striving, nothing. Now, some people might be like, oh, hell no, this would be torture, not self-care. Well, it turns out it's a practice, and we don't have to be perfect at it. So if you need some music, go ahead. The point is that you're trying to create some centeredness. You're trying to get back to the internal you. Number 2, you're going to start taking personal accountability. Because surprise, surprise, it turns out this self-betrayal shit is your fault. And it's no shocker that taking some personal accountability is going to alleviate that shitty feeling. So as an act of self-care today, I want you to just say to yourself, I apologize for betraying you. It's that easy. There's no magic. It's just about acknowledging that you put yourself through some painful denial and that it's time to admit it and work on allowing yourself to feel your real feelings. Notice how I didn't say I'm sorry. We're not going to repeat these patterns. You're going to say, I apologize for betraying you. And that's going to allow you to really work on those feelings, which brings me to number 3. Number 3 in my self-care tips for how to heal from self-betrayal, you're going to become obsessed and an expert on identifying feelings. Now, I've got a post that's on Facebook, and it's also on IG from the Self-Care is Sexy account, and it's got a feeling wheel that I got from my therapist years and years ago, and it's saved me so many times. But I've got this on my phone, and when my red flag goes off, but I don't know what's going on, I pull that sucker out and look at it. Because being able to describe exactly how you feel, giving words to what you're experiencing and what your situation, good, bad, or in between, that is the secret sauce to healing from self-betrayal. You get good at identifying your feelings and allowing yourself to feel them, then you're not going to have these negative reactions to things when other people are trying to change who you are. You're not going to get sucked up into that. Number 4, I talked about this before, make a list of your personal values. At your core, if you are stripped of everything you've been told and of every influence that's stuck itself to you, if you got rid of that, what would be the priority? Not what you were raised with, not how your sweetie thinks, but you. What are your values? And surprise, if you don't know, guess what, Buttercup? You guessed it. You get to sit alone and be quiet and fucking ask and figure it out. Number 5, crying without judgment. Now, here is one of the hardest acts of self-care. Crying. But not just crying without judgment. And this one is challenging because you might not need to cry over this self-betrayal stuff, and that's okay. But the next time that you find yourself really sad or angry or even excited, if your next thought is about what will others think if I do express this feeling or if I do cry in front of them, because it's like dumb or not warranted or whatever the case may be, just remember that we're practicing allowing ourselves to be ourselves. And this is such a huge act of self-care. So many people, especially my dudes out there, suppress their emotional responses when they're afraid those responses are going to be perceived as weak. So your default mode is, I have an emotion I can't identify or I can't contain, so I'm going to get angry. If you build your emotional intelligence so that you have a few more go-tos, you're going to have a lot less trauma and bullshit to deal with. Number 6. In my ways to heal from self-betrayal, practice your intuition. First of all, the only way to know that it's intuition and not just something you're making up is that intuition is always going to make you feel slightly uncomfortable. And it's always going to be the answer that you kind of don't want to hear. That's what your intuition is. So if you want some self-care today that's going to really help you heal from any past self-betrayal, you got to take the time to practice and work on intuition. To do that, you got to get out of your head and you got to get in your body. Look up intuition tests or work on identifying sensations. Ask yourself yes or no questions. You can even use a deck of cards and start with your intuition by sensing whether or not the card is red or black. All of these ways are ways that you can tap into and practice asking for guidance from your intuition and getting that feedback. Number 7, choosing to love ourselves over making others uncomfortable. So this is a tough one. It takes a lot of practice, but you're going to start with someone that you trust, someone that you care, and even if you have betrayed yourself through this relationship and you don't feel like that person knows the real you, you're going to practice by saying how you really feel about something that they don't like. You're going to contradict something they don't like, and you're going to practice reacting positively to it and allowing yourself to feel how you really feel. Because choosing to love yourself and choosing to be authentically in who you are versus making other people comfortable, it is not something we were all born with. So it's something that we have to practice and make a priority. Number 8, work on forming non-romantic connection with others. Now, this goes back to, you ever hear that saying when you're going through a breakup, like the easiest way to get over someone is to get under someone else? There's always this push that if you have a romantic relationship with somebody, that is your value. That is your worth. Whether you have one or you don't, that's what makes you feel like you're a whole person or not. And I'm telling you right now that having a connection with yourself, having a command connection with yourself requires being in non-romantic relationships with other people. Because friendship requires accountability and authenticity. Start to work on those non-romantic friendships first so that you can utilize them as a practice ground. And get vulnerable with your people. Tell them this is something you're working on. Ask them to point it out for you. Number 9, in my 10 ways of self-care healing through self-betrayal, list some things that you'd like to try. Get creative and start thinking outside of the box. What is something like a hobby or a sport or something you wanted to do as a kid, but then you later gave up because everyone told you it wouldn't make you money, you wouldn't be successful? Start making that list so that you can find out what you truly like to do. And then guess what, genius? Start doing that shit instead. Number 10, and last but not least on my 10 ways to self-care through self-betrayal, practice saying how you feel and asking for what you want. Now, this is a huge, huge deal. If you are a chronic people pleaser, if you are codependent, if you strive to make everything around you okay before you take care of yourself, your homework assignment this week is to go to a restaurant, order a meal, and even if it is served perfectly to your liking, send it back. That's right. Don't be a dick about it. Don't be a Karen. Just send it back. This is practicing asking for what you want and practicing conflict in a healthy and safe environment. The key is don't be a dick about it. So I'm going to run through that list one more time. 10 ways that you can get self-care to help heal from self-betrayal. Number 1, get grounded, centered, and silent. Number 2, take some personal accountability. Number 3, become an obsessed expert on identifying feelings. Number 4, make a list of your personal values. Number 5, practice crying without judgment. Number 6, work on your intuition. Number 7, choose loving yourself over making others comfortable. Number 8, form non-romantic relationships with others. Number 9, list out some fun hobbies you'd like to try. And number 10, practice saying how you feel, asking for what you want, and healthy conflict. All right, folks, that's it for this week. Thank you for joining me. If you have a story you'd like to share and you want to be on the show, please email me. It's Chris, Kris, at selfcareissexy.com. Okay, we got some really great content coming your way, so stay tuned. And remember that self-care is sexy. We're giving you permission to put yourself first.